January 21st, 2019. Somewhere over the English Channel, at approximately 8,000 feet, a single-engine Piper PA-46 Malibu aircraft disappears from radar. On board are two people. The pilot, David Ibbotson, 59 years old, from Crowley in North Lincolnshire. And a passenger, Emiliano Sala, 28 years old, from Progreso, Argentina, a footballer who, 48 hours earlier, had just completed the most important transfer of his life. He had sent voice messages to friends before boarding. His words, later played to the world by people who loved him, were the words of a man who was afraid. The plane, he said, looked like it was falling apart. He was joking, maybe. Or maybe he wasn't. The aircraft was last detected at 2016 Greenwich Mean Time, 6 miles north of Guernsey. And then, nothing. Air traffic control called. No answer. The Coast Guard launched a search. By morning, they had found nothing but cold gray water and the particular silence that follows a disappearance over the sea. Emiliano Sala had spent 15 years climbing from a small town in the Argentine province of Santa Fe to the summit of French football. He had done it the hard way, lone moves, lower leagues, years of grinding obscurity before Nantes, before the goals, before Cardiff City came calling with £15 million. He never made it to Cardiff. He never played a single minute for the club that had just paid a record fee to sign him. The English Channel took him on a January night, and what came after, what football's institutions did and failed to do, is a story that cuts to the heart of a sport that too often mistakes money for morality. 320 to 640, the boy from Progreso. To understand what was lost, you have to understand where he came from. Progreso is a small town, barely 3,000 people, in the Entre Rios province of Argentina. The kind of town where football is not a career path but a religion, played on dusty pitches in the afternoon heat until the light fails completely. Emiliano Sala grew up there, the son of Horacio and Mercedes, with a younger brother, Dario, and a sister, Romina. He was, by every account from those who knew him, the most warm-hearted person in any room he entered. He left Argentina as a teenager, the way so many South American players do, on a wing and a prayer, crossing to Europe with a small bag and a telephone number for an agent who may or may not return the call. He landed at San Pedro in Spain, then moved through the French lower divisions with the patience of someone who understood that his path was going to be longer and harder than most. Bordeaux gave him his first top-flight chance in League One, but it was Nantes, the port city on the Loire, where Emiliano Sala became the player the world would eventually notice. Between 2015 and 2019, he scored 42 goals in League One for Nantes. He became the heartbeat of the club, the striker the fans built chants around, the man who dragged a mid-table side into something worth watching every weekend. He was not flashy. He was not the kind of player who ends up on advertising hoardings in Tokyo. He was a center forward who worked, who pressed, who ran for 90 minutes and buried his chances with a quiet, devastating efficiency. Clubs began to notice. Cardiff City, newly promoted to the Premier League under Neil Warnock, needed a striker. In January 2019, they made their move. 6:40 to 10 o'clock, the transfer. £15 million. In January 2019, that was a Welsh record. It was the largest transfer fee Cardiff City had ever paid, and it was a statement, a declaration that they were serious about staying in the Premier League, willing to spend at a level that made their accountants uncomfortable. For Emiliano Sala, it was validation of 15 years of sacrifice. His family in Progreso watched the news break with tears of joy. He flew back to Nantes to say goodbye to his teammates and to the city that had made him. The footage of those farewells, Sala embracing his Nantes colleagues in the dressing room, laughing, emotional, would later become unbearable to watch. It was January 19, 2019. He had 2 days left. The travel arrangements for the flight from Nantes to Cardiff were made through connections linked to football agent Willie McKay and his son Mark, who had helped broker the transfer. A private charter was arranged, a small, aging Piper Malibu, to be piloted by David Ibbotson. Ibbotson was not licensed to fly passengers for hire under the Civil Aviation Authority's regulations. He held a private pilot's license. He was being paid to carry a passenger. These are two very different things under the law and under basic safety standards. Whether Sala knew any of this as he boarded the aircraft at Nantes Atlantique Airport on the evening of January 21, 2019, we do not know. What we know is that he sent those voice messages to friends before takeoff, that the weather over the channel was deteriorating, that no flight plan was filed with air traffic control, and that at 2016 Greenwich Mean Time, the plane vanished. 10 to 13:20, the search in the silence. The official search lasted 2 days. The Channel and Rescue Helicopter Service, the RNLI, French maritime authorities, they swept the waters north of Guernsey in January cold and found debris. A seat cushion. Part of the aircraft. No survivors. On January 23, 2019, the authorities called off the search. Sala's family refused to accept it. His sister Romina, his father Horacio, his friends from Nantes, they launched a private fundraising campaign to hire an independent search vessel. Within days, the football world had donated over £300,000. The ship went out. On February 3, 2019, underwater footage captured by a remotely operated vehicle showed the wreckage of the Piper Malibu on the seabed of the English Channel, at a depth of 67 meters. And in the wreckage, a body. It was Emiliano Sala. He was recovered on February 7th. The post-mortem confirmed he had died from head and chest injuries consistent with a plane crash. But it also found something else, extremely high levels of carbon monoxide in his blood. The aircraft had likely been leaking the colorless, odorless gas into the cabin. He may have been incapacitated before the plane ever hit the water. David Ibbotson was never found. The grief across football was genuine and immediate. Tributes in stadiums across Europe. Shirts hung on goalposts. Nantes retired his number 9. Cardiff City painted a mural. But even as the world mourned, the lawyers were already circling. 1320 to 1640, the stain. While Emiliano Sala's family were still identifying his body, Cardiff City's lawyers were arguing they did not owe Nantes the £15 million transfer fee. Their position, that the transfer had not been fully completed at the time of Sala's death, and therefore the obligation to pay was in dispute. It was a legal argument. It was also, to many people watching, an act of profound moral ugliness. FIFA's dispute resolution chamber ruled against Cardiff in October 2019 and again on appeal in 2020. Cardiff were ordered to pay Nantes the first installment of the fee, approximately £6 million. Cardiff challenged this at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. They lost again. In the end, they paid. But the image of a football club fighting in court over a transfer fee for a player who had died before pulling on their shirt, that image did not leave people quickly. The investigation into the crash deepened the scandal. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch concluded in 2020 that the pilot, David Ibbotson, had been operating outside the terms of his license when he agreed to carry Sala for payment. The carbon monoxide levels in both the wreckage and Sala's bloodwork pointed to a catastrophic failure in the aircraft's exhaust system. This was not a freak accident of weather. It was a preventable death enabled by the football industry's casual, decades-long habit of using unlicensed private charters to move players around Europe with no due diligence and no accountability. After Sala died, nothing fundamentally changed. No new regulations. No mandatory safety checks. No requirement for licensed commercial aircraft for player transfers. The same informal arrangements that put Emiliano Sala on that plane remain in use across football today. 1640 to 2000 hours, what he left behind. Emiliano Sala's shirt, number 9, Nantes yellow, now hangs permanently in a display case at the Stade de la Beaujoire. His name is painted on a wall in the docklands of Cardiff, in a city he never had a chance to call home. In Progreso, the football pitch where he first learned to play has been renamed in his honor. His father Horacio still visits it. The people who knew him best say the same thing when they are asked to describe him, that he was kind, that he remembered every person who helped him on the way up, that he called his mother every day, that the week before the Cardiff transfer was completed, he had already been asking teammates in Nantes about local schools in the city because he was thinking about bringing his family over. He was thinking about the future in the way that only people who have earned every step of their journey know how to think about it, with gratitude, with care, with a quiet sense that the good things must be shared. There are two stories inside the story of Emiliano Sala. One is the story of a man who climbed from Progreso to the Premier League on merit, on character, on 15 years of refusing to stop. That story deserved a different ending. The other is the story of an industry, wealthy, powerful, largely self-governing, that allowed the conditions of his death to exist, profited from the transfer that put him on that plane, and then spent months arguing about the invoice. Both stories are true. Both should be remembered. He was 28 years old. He was going to Cardiff. He had sent his friends a voice message saying he was a little scared. And then the radar went dark, and the channel was cold and silent, and the game went on. Emiliano Sala scored 42 goals for Nantes. He never played for Cardiff City. He was the product of 15 years of work, of early mornings in Progreso, of loan moves and bus journeys, and the patient, stubborn belief that he was good enough. He was. Good night. And remember the people who climbed the hard way, not for the money, not for the cameras, but because the game itself, at its simplest and truest, was worth every single step.